in Slack, there's a repo for you to clone down. It's this guy right here. It's just a back end and front end template just to get started. So I could go straight to the teaching of the optimistic versus pessimistic without, creating a whole Rails app. It's 101.
Which one? In Slack, in our cohort Slack?
It's in the Slack. Yeah, I'll post it again in here. It's also in this chat. I'm just gonna post it 100 times. Let's get it. Just kidding. And you guys are looking at the screen where my mouse is moving, right?
No.
Nope.
No.
Oh, I wasn't even sure.
No.
Okay, I'll share my screen now. Glad I checked. Awesome. Cool. And without further ado, we're going to get started. Okay. So first, we're just going to start making sure everything works. I'll exit out of it just so that way we all go through the steps together. This guy right here is CD'd into my back end. This guy right here is CD'd into my, excuse me, that ramen. This one is CD'd into the front end, and this one is just like a terminal that's there just in case I need to do some terminal-y stuff. So that way everyone can kind of see everything at the same time. All right, let's go ahead and we're gonna first, wrong terminal. I'm gonna be over here and I'm gonna type in Rails DB migrate and Rails DB seed, except for I already did that. So it don't really matter, but I'll run it again. Oh wait, you know what? Oh, now I have twice the amount. That's fine. It'll be probably nicer to look at anyways. Because he never did the, I noticed this doesn't have a delete function, that's a destroy here. So it's just gonna reseed with twice the amount. But whatever, it'll be easier to look at. Great. So I'm gonna open up my notes here just to make sure I'm covering things right. Now I'm gonna run Rails S. Let's check to make sure we're hitting that back end endpoint. I'm gonna do that by just going to localhost 3000. Boop-a-boo. Bam. And we are going to go to, let's see, I think the thing is cartoons. So I'm gonna go to cartoons. Beautiful, we have cartoons. There's double, so because I seeded twice and there was no destroy in there, I have twice the amount of cartoons, but screw it, I want twice the amount of cartoons. Great. So now what are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna do stuff that's pretty familiar at first. We are going to make a front end, and all that we really wanna do is make a front end and do what we know how to do, but in a slightly different way. So we're gonna start by, let's call this app something. Let's call this, what do we think? Cartoon app. Cool. And then we're gonna want a form, which we'll worry about what the form is gonna be later. But for now, I think I can, if I type in form, I think it does a lot of that for me. And we actually don't need this action here. Cool. Pop that. Oh wait, I don't know why I did that. Okay, cool. So we have a form, and then let's make a container. So let's make a div, and we'll give it an ID of, I don't know, cartoon container. Bam. Awesome. Let's see, and let's make a heading. Nah, we'll just leave it as that. And above that, we'll say, cool. That'll be fine. Great. So now let's see what we created. See what monster we have built. Localhost 3001. I probably should run light server first. Bam. Light server running. We have a cartoon app. Okay. First thing that we want to do is get our existing ones to populate the page. Who could start me off on how we're going to do that? I'm going to start calling out people.
Do a fetch.
Do a fetch. Okay, what's the first step to doing a fetch?
Go into your app.js file.
Okay.
Fetch. I guess, yeah, you should see if you're hitting, right?
Yeah, let's do that first. Good,
Yeah.
good call. Oh, it looks like we're connected. Where
Yeah.
are we connected? I didn't even see the script tag. I actually thought that was gonna break. Oh, we got it right there at the bottom. Okay. I was looking for it in the header. I'm gonna put it in the header because I like it in the header. Header better.
Forget to defer.
Precisely. Cool. Let's make sure we're still hitting. Cool, we're hitting. We're good. All right. Now we're gonna do a fetch here, right? Great. Fetch. Where am I going to?
Localhost.
Cool. So I'm just gonna pop that out of there. 3,000, 3,001, 4,752. Which one? What's the number here?
3001. Is that what you said?
Yeah, which one do I want here? What number?
3,000
Yeah.
/ cartoons.
3,000/cartoons. Why?
That's the data we want to pull.
Awesome. Cool.
Fetch.
Great. Now, instead of doing this, we're just going to clean that up a little. We're just going to say const base URL equals do. Get rid of that guy. Kablamo. Bam. Make this base URL. Great. What's next? I'm gonna stop asking and start calling out people because I want everybody to engage. I'm gonna be that teacher. All right, Sanjeev, what do we do after that?
We use .then and use response and parse it using a
Beautiful. .then response. What do I write next, Sanjeev?
arrow.
What?
We use
Arrow.
arrow
Yup.
and response.json
Whoops.
and
Great. I just want to make sure I can see everybody on the call. So I want to see if I can. I gotta hang on a second. I just want to make sure I can see everybody's names because someone is just a cat on the screen. Oh, that's Lynn. Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I've got that screen pulled up. Now I can see everything. Cool. There we go. Great. All right. And what's next, Lynn?
Sorry, I was muted. Then you take the response JSON and just make it the response that you're getting.
Can you clarify what you mean?
I think it's, sorry, it's been a little while since I've done this and I'm a bit rusty, but you take the response JSON and.
So let's just clarify what's going on here. The thing that gets done by this, so we're saying, whatever comes out of here, we're returning the response. That's what gets input as the argument to the callback function here. So whatever this is a callback function. Let's make it an anonymous function real quick, right? So the input argument is going to be whatever came from the last promise. So let's call it, the return from here. But what is this returning? Cartoons. So let's call it cartoons. And then now we are plugging cartoons into this block of code from here to here. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Cool. Now, what do we want to do with our cartoons, Lynn?
you want to render them.
We want to render them. Yeah, exactly. So how are we going to do that?
You write a render function.
Sure, we can write a render function. Let's do some of that right here first, just because it's, I think it's maybe easier to go over the logic and then clean it up afterwards. So what is that acronym? It's you create,
Manipulate, append.
what? Yeah, that's it. Can you-
Create, manipulate, append.
Create, manipulate, append. What did we do to create first?
Did you console log? See if that's getting back.
Good call. Great call. Really glad that you're working in your thin vertical slices there. So I need to rearrange these windows, don't I? Bam, bam, cool. Awesome. So looks like it's working. Console log, good call. Appreciate that. So what's the next thing I want to do then? What is the thing that I want to append to? Out of curiosity.
Probably that div container that you made.
Yeah, what did we call it again? We called it
It was ID cartoon
I
container.
call it
Yeah.
cartoons container because it's containing cartoons, not a cartoon. I feel like that might be a better name. Oh, better save it. So now we're gonna say, I don't know, we could do a cartoons container. I like to put $ in front of anything that I'm referencing from the HTML or that's a node. So we're gonna do cartoons container equals document dot query selector, and we're grabbing by ID, and we're just saying cartoons container. Cool. We can console.log that really quick. Boop. Oh, wow, I suck. Okay, cool. Bam. There we go. Save that. Let's see, make sure it works. I'll type our document.query selector. Selector, right? Bam. Looks like it's working. We got a div. That's what we wanted. Cool. So we got our cartoons container. What do we want to do next? Maybe we want to make, let's say we want to make cards for all of these cartoons. Because what information do we have? Let's take a look at that. We've got a name and we've got an image URL. Cool. And we got an ID too if we want to use it. So we've got all three of those little chunks of information that we can use. We don't care so much about the created at and updated at, but let's make a card that contains like all of that information except for maybe the ID or something, but like, let's do that. So
Hey, John, when you do a $ cartoons container like that, do you still have to like label it a const or a let, or is it implied with that
do.
$?
I don't know why that works sometimes when you're doing nodes, but you should not do it. It's better to call it const. Good call. Thank you. It works, but it's bad practice. Okay, I need to turn off my Slack because it is just going insane right now. So I'm just gonna like completely close out of that. Oh my gosh. Oh God, go away Slack. Oh my God, it won't end. Did it? I think I closed it. Cool. All right. Great. So now what I want you to do is, well, what's coming next? So the next thing that we have to do is we have to create some stuff to put in that container, right? What am I going to create? Let's think about, maybe what we'd want this to look like. Well, a card is going to be some kind of div, right? So maybe we want a card to look something like this. Let's do a div, and then let's do an ID, or let's do a class equals a card, and then inside of here, maybe we have something like, we have an image. We could steal the source real quick just to see what we want to make. Why do I suck there? Bam, image source. There we go. And maybe we can grab one of these sources just so that way we could. I'm just going to do that. It'd be easier to copy. Oh, Rocco's Modern Life. That show is messed up if you ever go back and watched it. It's like just weird. Cool. So we've got an image. What else are we going to want? We're going to want maybe a title for it. So maybe something like here we can go title. Or I'm sorry, H1, H2 actually. We'll just say like Rocco's Modern Life. Cool. And then maybe we want this something that tracks which one it is. So we can just put an ID of, well, for Rocco's Modern Life, it's coming through here and it has an ID of 1. Cool. So let's just put the ID as 1. Great. So now let's just kind of see what that looks like. It ain't going to be pretty, but it'll be functional. If I can pull up the right thing. Cool. So we have Rocco's Modern Life. That's pretty big. I think it'll be easier to do this whole thing if we just shrink that a little bit. So let's make a CSS tag, which it looks like we already have one set up. In main.css, I'm going to go all image tags. I am just going to make their, what is it that I do? I think I could just go width equals like 20%, something along those lines. Make sure that that works. Probably should save this. There we go. That looks a lot nicer, don't it? Cool. If we want, we can make, what is this? We called this div card, right? So maybe we could make the background of the card a certain color, so that way all the cards look like cards. I don't know. Let's try it. Let's go. I could go dot card because, again, this is CSS selector, which dot means by class. Open it up and we'll say background color. I think there's like a cream on here or something. Cream, salmon. Let's do salmon. That sounds delicious. Cool. That is one ugly card, but it'll do the trick right now. We could actually shrink it a little bit to say, we'll do that at a different time. For now, that's our card. Great. We can, I'll worry about that later. This is not a styling lesson. So this is kind of what we're going to want this to look like. I'm going to copy this and paste this into our JavaScript so we can figure out how to make each of these. I'm just going to take it, make it look pretty, and then comment it out. That way I can have a rough idea of what I want to work with. Bam. So what's the outermost element that we want to create? Jay?
Sorry, computer's freaking out. Outermost, we want to make a div.
Cool. So let's start with that. Const, we're gonna call it my card. Let's keep this consistent there. Is going to equal what?
Document query selector.
Query selector?
Create element.
Thank you.
Sorry. And
No worries.
parentheses, quote, div.
Beautiful. Awesome. How are we going to get the class to equal card and the ID to equal the correct ID?
Do a class list dot add for the class.
Yeah, that works. So you could be my card. How does that work? I've actually never used that. Class list dot add. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in quotes,
parentheses.
whatever you want the class to be.
Wow, that's smart. Awesome. So we have.
We were told by someone to do that so that we didn't overwrite classes.
That's a great idea. So when you have a class, the reason where that comes from is you can have multiple classes. For example, maybe let's think of an example, right? Let's say I have this H2. Maybe I want two classes. I want large text to be one, and I want another one to be red text. Or let's make it orange text, right? So let's say I want to grab that. Maybe I want to do both of those things with my CSS. So I'm going to do red text. Bam. And then we'll do another one that's like large text. Bam. Let's go to our page for a second, just so you know why they probably told you to do that. We got to look at this guy. So we want this to be large text and we want it to be orange text. Did I say red? I meant orange. I should probably not make it orange. I'm actually going to make it green just because it's more contrasting color. But point is that now I can edit both of those at the same time. I can do color is green. Cool. So now I have green text, and then also I could make it large. So I could say font, what is it? Font size. Oops. It's going to be like 40 pixels. It's huge, but whatever. Now I have huge text. So now I'm using those classes to control that. Hopefully that was helpful, but we also do not want that on there. That's hideous. But anyways, but yeah, that's the reason why what he's doing is what he said was every node has a property called class list. And that property has a method on it that allows you to add another class to the class list. So instead of saying, the alternative to this would be saying my card dot class name equals equals card. But the thing is that then you lose your list of class names. But you could also do like string appending, but we'll worry about that a different time. For now, this is a good way of doing it. I really appreciate that. All right, so what else do we need to do? We got to add the ID, right? Let's actually take the ID and call it card1 or something like that. So now we could say something along the lines of like my card dot ID equals, what are we going to call it now? Typing slow here. Who's going to finish it off? Kelsey.
Would that just be like cartoon.id?
Mm-hmm. Except for I realized something that we messed up here. So this is actually going through all the cards at once. What do we need to do? What am I missing here? I'm missing something pretty big.
For each.
For each.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize I was missing that. So I'm just going to wrap all this in a for each. Cartoons dot for each. We're going to say for each cartoon, let's do this. Bam. And then we're going to drag all of this stuff in there. Great. And actually this we could probably rip out of there. Great. So now we have the same thing. So now we're going to say, what is this going to be? Kelsey.
Cartoon.id.
Beautiful. Let's see if that's
I
right.
think.
Yeah, I just want to double check this spelling. I think that's right though, but probably should get rid of some of these. Great. And then we've created our div. Now what else do we have to create? We have to create the things inside, right? So how am I going to create a title? I'm just going to kind of do some of these fairly quick so we can keep on moving. But let's create the H2 title. So we're going to say, we'll call it cartoon title equals document.create element. Element, bam, and we'll say H2. Cool. And then we can do down here, we're going to want our cartoon title to basically have what? We're going to want our cartoon title. And maybe we could actually group these with like what we're doing to them. So my card, we're doing that. Here, I'm going to say my cartoon title. We're going to want to say, cartoon title dot inner text. We're going to want to pull out the cartoon name. Is that right? Cartoon.
Yeah, it's name.
Yep, name. Cool. And then we're going to want to do, and that's all we need there. And then we're going to want const cartoon image. It's going to equal document.create element. And we are going to make an IMG. And then I think you could probably just say cartoon image.source. Does that work? I don't actually know. We'll find out. Equals, and we're going to say cartoon dot image URL. And then what's the last couple of things we have to do here?
You have to append.
Yep. So first we have to append these inside of the card. So this is where I'm going to say my card dot append. Can I append multiple things at the same time? I don't know. Append.
Yes.
So is it just comma separated? Is that how
Yep.
that works? Cool. Cartoon title, and then cartoon image.
I think, John, right above that, where it's cartoon title.source.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Right above there, cartoon title.source should be cartoon image.
You're definitely right. Awesome. And then let's clear up some of the space. And then now we just need to append all of that into our cartoons container. So
I think our div needs to go in there too. I don't think we've appended that in yet. Is that what you're talking about? Never
yeah,
mind.
that's exactly what I'm saying. We're appending our card. All right. Great. Let's see if that worked. We're going to have to delete that extra card, but do we suck? We do not suck. Cool. It's always good knowing that you don't suck. But now we have to get rid of this guy. We don't need it, right? We don't need our card in there because we are creating our cards dynamically. Beautiful. We have all these cards in here and they look super cool. All right. The next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to create a new card. So if I'm going to create a new card, the way that we know, what do I have to put in this form? Somebody lead the way. I'm going to call on Kyle.
In the form, you're going to need a method of post.
Let's ignore that one for now. Not that that's not a great answer. Let's do all the stuff inside of the form tag first.
You're going to make inputs.
Inputs, cool. Input, bam. Let's do type equals text. We'll do name equals, I don't know, what do we have? Let's think. We have to have an image URL. Awesome. And then we also, what else? Let's do a placeholder in there. Let's just say image URL. Cool. Let's make another one. What's the other thing I have to create a new one?
You need a name.
A name, cool. So name, let's do name. And we're gonna go here and say name. Cool. Let's see if we have a form here. Awesome, we have a form. Hooray. We need a submit button. That's the last thing. For this, all we should need is submit. Now, up until now, the way that we post this is by creating a post method on here and then doing like an action and telling it where to go. It's actually an old way of doing it. That's an older way of doing it, and we're going to do it a more fancy, cool, new way using this really cool concept called event listeners. Who can tell me what an event listener is?
Code that watches for a certain something to happen, and then when that certain something happens, it executes its code body.
Beautiful. It's looking for an event, and when it finds that event, it triggers a block of code to run. Cool. So let's think about one. Let's make one really quick. Let's just do a click event. I'm gonna make it, let's make it to where we're just gonna do a click event right on here. So let me show you kind of how a click event works. Okay, so first thing to a click event, maybe actually let's take a second to clean up this code first. Like Lynn had originally said, we could actually take this and break it down some. So let's break down this functionality. Sorry, I'm skipping around a little bit here. but I think it's actually going to be easier to cover event listeners if I could show you all cleaner code. So first thing that we're going to do is we want to put all of this stuff in a function that's like, okay, let's populate cartoons. Okay, cool. So populate cartoons is going to be a function, and it's going to take in an argument of cartoons, and then we're going to go here. So first thing that we can do here is change all this to go right. Oh, whoops, that's not what I wanted. I want this to go down there. We want to take all this and drag it into, whoa, I am not being smart here. There we go. We basically want to copy all this, and we want to put that in here. So we don't need this part. Let's get rid of one of the extra ones we had. Cool. So now what we're saying is, for each cartoon, we're going to create a card. So we're actually going to rip out that functionality as well. So we're going to say for each cartoon, all of this is just creating a card, right? So, and appending a card. So let's see. For each cartoon, we just want to do, let's get rid of all the stuff inside of here. Bam, and we're going to make a new function called function create card. Bam, because remember, all this logic really only works on one card at a time. Great. So we have our create card. Let's actually take this line of code and move it into that function. Awesome. What is create card going to need? It's probably going to need a cartoon. Awesome. And then our cartoons.forEach, we're going to invoke that. We're going to invoke create card for the cartoon. Does anybody have any questions on all the cleaning up we just did? I know somebody's got to have a question. I just did a lot really quick. We should also definitely make sure that it works.
You need to put that function, populate cartoons, in the promise.
Yes, I do need to do that. Awesome. So it still works. Nobody has any questions on any of that? Nobody? Okay, no worries.
Can you actually just keep it on your code for like a minute? I understand it, but just need to like catch up real quick.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do this for you. Yeah, there's a lot of changing stuff around there. And the goal of that was, oh, okay, now I have this functionality, which is creating a card. I have this functionality, which is populating cartoons. I have this, which is doing the fetch. And now all my code is separate from each other, so I can look at one chunk of logic at a time.
And you don't use parentheses and put cartoons with a fat arrow in the dot then populate cartoons just because populate cartoons is automatically going to take that, right?
What would we call this type of argument for a promise? There's a cool word for it that I've been like trying to shove down y'all's throats.
Callback?
It's a callback function, right? So this callback function by default plugs in whatever gets returned here. So it's actually plugging in response.json into populate cartoons by default.
So it doesn't need parameter?
Right, no, it does not. What you can do is you can do this if you really feel like you need to see it that way. you can pass it in this way. So you could say like cartoons, populate cartoons of cartoons. So this also is just a function. Let's say I pull up my terminal. I'm just gonna go into node here. Can I copy all this? We'll find out. So let's say I put all that in there. Now let's say I type in populate cartoons in here. Notice how it's just a function. The data type there is a function. Let's take this line of code and do the same thing. What data type do you guys think it's going to be when I copy and paste it? All of that highlighted code. It's going to also equal a function. And this is the thing. When a function like .then expects a function as its argument, if you then invoke it, right? Let's say you were to just invoke populate cartoons. You're not putting in a function anymore. You're putting in an invoke function, which is what that function returns. But for now, we can just leave it at this. It's a pretty rough concept to wrap your head around. For now, maybe it's better to just follow along, especially because we got plenty of stuff to cover before we're done here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is using event listeners. We are going to control what's coming out of this form. But let me first show you just what an event is. This is like your first official lesson on event stuff, right? Okay, so it's probably better to focus on event things now. So let's actually go in here and we just want to make this clickable. That's all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my index. Oh, whoops. My index.html. Let's actually put ID on this. We're going to call this ID equals page title or something like that. Cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my app.js, and we are going to say, just at the very top, we're going to write document.query selector, or actually let's break this out into two steps. I'm going to say const my title equals document.query selector, and then we're going to just pull out that title. So bam, and what did I call it? My title, page title. That's what I called it. Great. Then on the next line of code, we're going to say my title, which let me actually make that $sign because I like to be consistent. I am going to say my title dot add event listener. Add event listener is a function that takes two arguments. The first argument is the event. In this case, our event is going to be click. The other argument is going to be the block of code that you want to execute when the event is triggered. So for now, it would be like a function, right? Is effectively what you're doing. So for example, let's just make a function. We're going to say log something, right? Function log something, bam, bam, console.log something. Great. All I'm going to do is say, okay, when this event gets triggered, run log something. Awesome. So let's see what that does. Boop, boop. It's logging something. Now, remember how when I was telling you here that the thing that gets plugged into this function is the thing that is put out here? The thing that gets passed into an event listener's callback function is this thing called the event. So actually, if I were to modify this, write something called the event, I can just show you that this object called the event gets passed through. Let's go ahead and look at that. Boom. Let's look at this thing. It's a big object, right? This is a JavaScript object that's called an event. And we're not going to go too much into it right now, but the things that I want to focus on with this event is, well, one thing that it has is a target. So the target is the thing that I clicked on. So in this case, this event's target was that H1 title. There's other stuff like here. These are just different things you can kind of poke around through if you ever want to. But just note that there's different things you could pop into on like what actually is a part of that event object. Feel free to dig through it if you ever want to. So that was just to show you what an event is. We don't really care about that event though. We want to do a different event. So we're going to get rid of this. And now what we're going to do is we actually want to create an event for when our form gets activated. So we have all this stuff is for populating the cards. Now we want to do stuff with that form, right? So instead of my title here at the top, we're going to create something called my form. We are going to give our form an ID. So I'm going to get rid of this. We don't care about that right now. We want to give our form an ID of something, whatever. We'll call it my form. ID equals my form. Or actually, let's go a little bit more specific and say create cartoon form. Great. So now we have that. This time, what we're going to do is we are going to query selector create cartoon form. Awesome. Let's just make sure that that works. So console.log, and then we're going to say my form. So let's make sure it works. Okay, cool. So we're getting our form. That's all we care about. All right. Now here's where things are going to get new. So we're going to add an event listener on this form. We're going to say const, or no, I'm sorry, no const there. We're going to say my form. We are going to add an event listener to it. And we are going to say on submit. That is the event that we're passing in. And then what I'm going to do is inside of here, we are just going to console.log submitting. Whoops. Oop. Submitting. Let's see what happens. So what an on submit is, let's say all of this HTML is my form. Whenever I click the submit button, that's when it triggers an on submit. Let's look at it. What the heck? Can't see it. Okay, why? Can anybody tell me why I can't actually see that thing logging?
Because the page is reloading when you click the submit button. You need to prevent that.
Yep, exactly. So kind of like I did before, how I could console.log that event, we could actually do something with that event. So let's say we pass in an event like we did before. You can type in this, there is event has an option on it. You could say prevent default and enable that. And then now we're also console.log submitting. So what event.prevent default does is that will literally stop it from doing its default behavior. The default behavior of a submit button is to reload the page. Let's check to see if it worked. I messed up something. Let's see.
I think it's just supposed to be submit instead of on submit.
I think you're probably right. That's exactly what it was. Bam. So cool. So now this thing gets triggered every time I submit that. Here's the weird part about it. Well, what we used to do is we used to use this thing on here called an action, and that action would tell us where to make the post to, and it would do a whole bunch of default stuff for us in the back end that we didn't need to think about in the background, not back end, but yeah. Now we have to do some of that stuff manually. But would you all agree that whenever I click submit now, this form is just running through the code from here to here. So first, let's clean this up, pull this out. So instead of putting all this in here, we're going to make another event. We're going to call it handle submit. Handle submit. Let's make this a function. And we are going to pass in that event again. And then, great, that's our function. We're just going to go and copy all of this code here into there. And then we're going to replace this with handle submit. Cool. So now we have a function that's handling submit. Let's make sure we didn't break anything. Always a good gut check. I don't care how long you've been doing this stuff for, you're going to make mistakes. Cool. So it's still working. All right. So we want to be able to upload an image URL, and we want to be able to upload a name. So the first thing that I want to show y'all is this object that we work with. This object is going to be called, well, first I want to show y'all something else first, actually. Before we get to that, I want to show y'all the target. So I just want to show you what happens. Remember how I opened up that event object and was able to show you the target in there? You could also get it from inside of the JavaScript. So inside of the JavaScript, I'm going to say console.log event.target. So now when I'm here, boom. See what the target is? The target is that whole form. Great. Now, what we can do, there's a way to pull data out of that form. JavaScript has an object that it created for you by default, and that's called form data. So we're gonna do const form data, and this is a variable right here. But we're gonna say this is gonna equal new form data, and then whatever our form node is, which what is our form node here? Anybody have an idea?
My form?
We could actually do better than that. I think you could do my form. We could also say you could do it because it's outside of the scope. But let's say later on, maybe I wanted to add an event listener via a function or something. I don't know. It's not really necessary. But you could also do event.target in this case. You could do it. You could do, my form would work as well. But here I'm going to do event.target. You're also going to see this later on as well. Do you understand that, though, Kyle? Do you understand how that's working with the event.target?
I do. That wasn't me that spoke up before, though.
Oh, I thought
that was me. Sorry.
Oh, is that TJ? I can't see. It's not that. It's kind of annoying.
You don't recognize my voice yet, John?
Yeah, I guess not. I guess I'm a terrible person. What can I say? All right, so let's actually console.log form data so we can see what we're working with. Does anybody know what that keyword means, new? What is new doing?
Is it like creating a new instance?
New instance of an object, right? Cool. So new is a keyword that is creating this class, basically, called form data, which this whole class of form data is built basically to just pull data out of the form. It's like not that crazy, right? So let's look at it though. So we wanted to make it to where I'm actually going to type some stuff in here. Blah, 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 blah. Our name is going to be John. Cool. Submit. Let's look at what we're console logging. We're console logging that form data object. And inside of here, there's different stuff. There's different functions you can use. Get. So it's really more of, it's referencing a node, and then we can pull stuff out using it. So in order to pull stuff out of here, we can use this thing, and I'm going to actually pull open form data, right? Oh, you know what? It would have been easier. I can't necessarily show you in here, but let's do this. Let's do document.query selector, and then what is this? I'm just going to copy and paste this. So that way we can play around with it for a second. What did I mess up? My form is already, oh, my form is there. Okay. My form, so we're going to say form data, whoops, let form data equal new form data, and then we're going to put in my form. Okay. So now we can mess around with form data. And we could do like .get, and let's get, I don't know, let's get our image URL. Cool. So because this is named image URL, I could go in and type in form data .get image URL, and it works. I could also do form data .get name, and that should work as well. You could think of this very similar to your params on the Ruby end. You're just grabbing stuff by name. Super simple. So now we can go ahead and let's create some variables here in our form data. Whoops. So we want to say, we're going to say name const. Let's do name, new name. Let's do new name equals form data dot get name const new image URL equals form data dot get image URL. And then let's console.log both of those. Whoops. Whoa. Cool. So it's just console.log new name, new image URL. Great. I just did this all to say, okay, I could type in a new image URL, blah, 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 blah. My name is Johnny John. Great. Sweet, so it's working. Now comes the part where we have to figure out how do we actually make a, well, we can actually make a card right now. What if I told you we could actually make a card right now without doing anything and ever touching the back end? Let me prove it to you. So let's say I get a valid image URL. Let's find one. What's a good show from Cartoon Network? I can't think of one. I can't think of a good show from Cartoon Network. I guess I'll have to go with Dragon Ball Z. Okay. So we're going to go to, wow, there's some not appropriate for lesson pictures that came up. That's weird. That's weird. I like this one. Cool. We're going to copy the image address. We're going to go here, and we're going to make it, bam. Whoops. Oh, yeah, that worked. And then here we're going to call it Dragon Ball Z. All right. Wow, that is, wow, that is a large image. Okay. Sorry, that caught me by surprise. So here's what we're going to do. I can actually go ahead. I have a this thing already iterates through cartoons, right? So let's look at the format in which cartoons are made. Let's do this. Const new cartoon equals, and we're literally just going to copy this exact format. We don't need an ID though, right? So we just need a name and image URL. Name is going to equal new name. Bam, and then image URL equals is going to equal new image URL. Beautiful. So now I should, in theory, be able to just call create card on that. Let's see if it works. Image URL, oh, it went away. Let's go to it. I'll find this one. Dang it. I'm just going to go to imager.com. It's a better way probably to get images. Dragon Ball Z. Oh, I like this one. We're going to use this one. Oh, it's a GIF. Darn it. Let's see. I'm spending way too much time just looking for one. There's a place where you can do like title user. I only want images here. There's a way to do that. I just can't seem to find it because I forgot. I haven't been on Imager in forever. Imager. Why? Darn it. Advanced search. That's what I need. And it's going slow. Sorry. Oh, these are images, aren't they? That is a weird image. Please be an image. Dang it! How do I, oh man. I know that there is a way to do this. I'm going out of Imager. It's making me mad. Let's see if we can find one that's not giant. Copy image address. We're gonna go in here. We're gonna see if it works. Bam. DBZ. Did it work? It worked! It worked twice. Okay. Did anybody notice what I didn't even touch? What did I ever hit the back end at any point while getting this image to add to the end?
No.
That is correct. I've never touched the back end. That's what optimistic rendering is. Optimistic rendering is saying, I have to do both things. I have to change this on the page and I have to change it in my back end. But I'm going to change it on the page before I change it in the back end. That's all optimistic rendering means. Also, is there another class or something right now? I feel like there might be. Oh, I gotta open up Slack. Double checking here. Oh, we still got some people on. Okay, because I thought I saw a bunch of people drop out, but then I realized that it's actually just that my thing is not showing as much as it was before. But I'm gonna keep going. So all that optimistic rendering means, I'm gonna ask people to just spit it back to me. Let's see, who? Matt. What is optimistic rendering versus pessimistic rendering?
Let's see. Pessimistic rendering is you wait for the fetch to return.
Before what? Explain to me what two things are you prioritizing and in what order?
Okay. Oh, you had to ask me this one. I was trying to catch up on the code, and let's see. So pessimistic rendering is optimistic rendering is where you wait for after the call to get it back.
Where I what?
No, I don't know. I'm sorry. I was trying. Huh?
It's okay. It's all good. So we got two things that we got to do. One thing that we got to do is change what's on the page. The next thing that we got to do is change what's in the back end, right? We got to do
right.
What's the order in which I do those things if I'm optimistically rendering?
Well, with optimistic, you take care of the user first.
Exactly. You're taking care of it on the user end first, which the user is using your front end website. Then you change it on the back end afterwards. So I'm gonna ask everybody in here. Lynn, what is that? What is optimistic versus pessimistic rendering? Explain it to me.
Optimistic rendering means that you render your data onto the user interface, onto the page, before you add it to the database. And pessimistic means that you add it to the database before you render it on the front end. And there's specific uses for each.
That was a really great explanation. The only thing I would tweak is just when you said add, you could also delete optimistically. So it's not just adding. If I were to delete this optimistically, the first thing I would do is remove one of these, and then I would remove it from my back end as well. Darcy, what's the difference between optimistic and pessimistic rendering? No, Darcy. All right, what
Hey,
about
Darcy, I
Brian?
think you're
Oh,
muted.
she's there. She's there. What?
I was just say she's muted, I think. At least she's showing up as muted to me.
Yes, she's definitely muted. I don't know that she might not be there, but that's okay. What about Brian? Either Brian. Whoever goes first.
Yeah. Optimistic rendering is changing the user interface first before storing it in the back end, and then pessimistic would be storing it in the back end first before changing it on the page. Good example of that would be like a bank. You want to save what your account actually is before displaying it to somebody.
I'm really glad that you said that. Yeah, that's an example. So as software developers, we're not often going to be doing the whole pessimistic rendering thing being a good idea. Well, what he's getting at is that, let's say I run a bank, right? The reason why we do optimistic rendering over pessimistic rendering is because it's faster. I don't have to worry about reloading a screen in order to get stuff to pop up. I don't have to send a whole request to the back end just to make something happen on the screen. So it's way faster to do it optimistically. But let's think about the alternative, right? If you have a bank or something like that, let's say you do a banking transaction and all that is handled by your back end, you probably don't want to show that your like account balance has updated until it actually has updated in the back end server. So hopefully that makes sense. But cool. So that's basically why this didn't persist. That's why this DBZ goes right away as soon as I refresh the page. We haven't uploaded it in the back end yet. So now we get to do that. So now we got our stuff from the form data. What do we use to make a post request inside of JavaScript?
Fetch.
Yep. So we are going to say fetch. What are we going to do here?
Your base URL.
Really glad that you used base URL instead of like telling me to write all that out, because I was about to write all of it out. Okay, what else goes in here? Is this all we need for a fetch?
No.
What else do I need?
Method.
So we're going to open this up. This is where we create an object. So this fetch actually has multiple arguments. One of them is optional. So first one is your URL. You have to have that every time. The second thing that you have to have is you have to have an object. So now we're going to start this object, and this object has different like key value pairs in it that allow you to get through to your backend correctly. So let's look at how we're going to structure this. So we're going to have two main keys. We're going to have our method, which is going to be what? Anybody know what that method is going to be?
Post.
Yep. Post. Whoops. And then we're going to have our headers. We're actually going to have three. I'm sorry. Which I got to make sure I get the capitalization right on these. This is actually going to be a nested object inside of here. And we'll deal with that in a second. And then we're going to have our body, which is going to be what?
New cartoons. Or a new cartoon.
Yup. There's only one problem with that. So our backend reads a JSON file, right? It's built to read.
Oh, you got to stringify it.
Yep. So we got to turn this into a JSON JSON file. So that, cool. And then the two things that we need in our headers, these are kind of like your permissions for the backend. So I don't know, for now, let's just take a surface value. We have to put these in here, except, and then here we need application/JSON. That's the type of I'm not actually, I got to get back to y'all on these headers, but y'all should ask about that. I'm going to ask about that because I'm a little iffy on those. And then we have content type, and this is like saying, okay, we're putting a JSON file in. So we also need application JSON. Awesome. And now we're going to see if it actually works. Let's find out on today's episode of Coding with John. Submit, bam. So now we have this. Let's see if we can refresh it and it stays. It works. Awesome. Did anybody not get their thing to work out of curiosity? Anybody?
Yeah, can you go back to your JS?
Yep.
So why does that comma after body not cause issues?
Okay, so that's
trailing comma doesn't matter for this.
Well, I think it's an important distinction. Let me ask you this. Is this a JavaScript object or a JSON object?
JSON.
Nope.
No,
this is JavaScript object.
Mm.
This is a JSON object. Or winds up one. So there's some rules to JSON objects. And one of the rules with JSON object is no trailing commas. But you can have it in JavaScript objects. You can have trailing commas. You could also do that in Ruby hashes. It's fine. It works. You cannot have trailing commas inside of JSON though. So there's really no problem here. Cool. Let's open the floor for some questions. Actually, I have a question for y'all before we do that. If I were to take this and move this here, would that change whether or not it's optimistic or pessimistic?
No.
So I think it actually, as I was asking that question, I realized technically it might, but it might not either. This, basically the reason why is because this line of code triggering is going to happen as soon as this starts, because even if since this is asynchronous, when this starts running, it doesn't stop the next line of code from running. So this is kind of going to happen at its own pace. It's basically optimistic either way. But
so if that fetch, sorry, John.
Nope, go for it.
I was going to ask if that fetch failed due to like a validation issue, would the create card still go through then?
It would try to, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not. This create card is not happening with a dot then. The dot then is like saying, okay, this is JavaScript's way of saying, whoops, dot then, like wait for some shit to happen, wait for your response before you do anything. That's JavaScript's way of saying that. If I were to put this afterwards, it's not even going to wait, so it doesn't really matter. But the other thing that we can do, by the way, is it's still probably good practice to do a dot then here. So we could still do a dot then, response goes to response.json. Whoops. And then you could do something like .then console.log. So that way we get a response. So let's see what that does. Anybody got another show?
I get.
Anybody ever see Bobo 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 Bo? It's a weird one. Copy image address. We're going to go here. I'm going to put that in there. Then we're going to go. Cool. So now I get this nice thing, which is telling me, oh, okay, you created one. And that's my back end just sending that to me. Cool. So that's like my way of letting me know that it actually went through to the back end.
So I hate to pull back for a second, but when you said if it matters, the scoping with that fetch, would that really matter optimistic or pessimistic, or just because the fetch is actually storing it?
Right. So what I would say is, like, as far as the scoping goes, don't concern yourself about the scoping. The scoping is not really the issue here. What it's more of is, think of the timing of a fetch. A fetch by design is meant to say, oh, okay, or it's really these .then, these promises. They're by design there to say, oh, okay, wait until all this runs to do anything. And my question for you is, what is faster? Deleting something off the page or adding something on the page, or waiting for a response from the back end? What happens quicker?
Just doing it off the page.
Yeah. So even if you start this first, so in theory, even if you start this first, this is still going to run first. And I'm pretty sure it would still be considered optimistic rendering, but I'd actually want to check on that. But as long as you kind of understand the concept that optimistic rendering is about changing what's going on the page before you change what's going on in the back end.
Okay, gotcha.
So can you do the create card new cartoon then in that last .then? Is that how you would want to do that, since you want to make sure that it goes through the server first?
Optimistic anymore.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Because if you put it in there, then you're waiting for the response to come back, so it's no longer optimistic.
I get.
And I would.
Sorry.
No, go for it. Let's try it.
I was gonna say, I guess my question then is, like, how do you control for, like, invalidity in what they try to submit? Because you probably wouldn't want to optimistically render it if like the validation fails, because then they would think, like, oh, this isn't the database, the website has this stored now.
Yeah, and that's a really strong use case for when you might not want to use optimistic rendering. So that's a really good observation, right? Like, maybe you want to use the backend to validate something, and that might be a good circumstance where you don't want to use optimistic rendering, right? Like, think about like a like button on Facebook or something like that, though, right? You're not going to input a valid response. You would have to be trying to input a valid response, invalid response on a like on Facebook. Or maybe you're posting a comment. I don't know what you would have to do to submit an invalid response on Facebook, but there's constraints on the front end to prevent you from doing that. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like if you tried to type in like a username that was invalid, it wouldn't like reload the page or log you in.
So I would say this would be a strong example of maybe where you would want pessimistic rendering in real life, but I'm just trying to teach you optimistic rendering.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, so optimistic rendering would, like in a real life scenario, would probably be better used where you can like restrict the user input. So like they can only like select something and then that's
Exactly. No, that's a really good way of thinking about it. You're using optimistic rendering when it's like you know exactly what you're changing and you just want it to happen fast. There's also other alternatives, like you could make it to where maybe you optimistically render and then you get something sent back, and when it gets sent back, if it's erroneous, you have a function that cleans it up. That's another option as well. Haven't done too much of that, but
that would be a pessimistic render then, right? Since you're waiting for it to come back.
You could render optimistically, and then after you get your response back, be like, oh shit, you actually messed something up, and then change it. I don't know when you would do that, but that's definitely something you could do if you wanted to. Because you can just say, okay, when my response comes back, I'm going to try doing something else. Do you guys want to style these cards? Because it's irking me that these cards look the way they do.
They do look horrible.
They look horrible. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn all of this into a flex box. So we're going to go to main.css. What is our container called? Our container is called cartoons container. Cool. Dot cartoons. Oh, is it ID? It's ID. Cartoons container. Bam. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this, I'm just going to say display and then flex. Or if I want to do the shorthand with Emmet abbreviations, which by the way work for CSS as well as HTML, I could just type in DF and it does it for me. Cool. Did that fix my problem? No, it did not, because I do not have a fixed width on my cards. So I can just do width equals, I don't know, 200 pixels. Bam. Let's see what that looks like. Probably should hit save. Whoops, that's not, I didn't want to hit save on there. I wanted to hit save on here. Did that do it? Oh, wow, that was horrible. What did I mess up? I think that this, when I do 20%, it's 20% of the container. So I think I could say 100% of the container. And now they're going to equal, 100% of the container. But what am I messing up here? I'm messing up something. Display flex. I haven't done CSS in quite a while, believe it or not.
Do you want to like change the flex direction so it doesn't all fit on one row?
No, I don't think would be the problem. I think the problem is that I have this, this 200 pixels. Let's see if that solves the problem. What am I messing up here? Dot card, background color. We have
like space between or space around.
I think that there's a flex wrap thing. Wrap. Flex wrap. Wrap. Is that the problem? That was the problem. Now we have all of them, but there's no space between them. And I think that that's because I don't think flex, let me see. Let's see, justify content. Space around. I don't think that'll do it, but it might. Oh, it did do it. Good work. This looks hideous. I need to refresh on my CSS, but at least they're cards now. I think it's because I did it with justify content and not, what is the other alternative? It's
Line items.
Line items. Yeah, that's it. See what that does. No, that didn't do it. Anyways, I'm gonna get back to y'all on the CSS. I need to get back on my CSS grind. I haven't done that honestly for a while. And it's also one of
Flexbox Froggy, baby.
what?
Flexbox Froggy, baby.
Flexbox Froggy, indeed. No, I think it has something to do with some constraint that I put on the elements. Like I think that I have to specify a width on one of these elements, and that might be what's causing it, but I could be wrong. I don't know, it's been a minute since I've done this. But challenge mode, now you can go and fix up these cards to where they don't look hideous. And then teach me, because apparently I'm terrible at CSS. No, but hopefully y'all got what you needed out of this lesson. Let's open up the floor for some questions that you guys might have about like this optimistic rendering, pessimistic rendering, event listeners. We did a lot. Form data, there was a whole lot of stuff. If you want me to dive deep into anything, I don't think there's any classes right now for y'all, so I could go all day.
So both optimistic and pessimistic are essentially do the same thing, just in different orders or with different dependencies.
It's that simple. Yep. It's that optimistic rendering. You're changing it on the front end before the back end. You're saying, first, let me change the user interface, and then on the back end, I just want to make it to where it persists. I'm just going to keep adding shows unless you guys ask more questions, because I really want to see Pokemon on here for some reason. That is going to be our picture. really hope there's nothing in it. Oh, Bulbasaur's way cooler. Swolimon. Hey, am I right? Okay, that was a terrible pun. Minus 10 points for John. Bam. Swolemon. Cool. Let's add a bunch of them. Great. It's a much better application now. Hopefully y'all would agree. Any more questions? So your code challenge is going to be a lot more JavaScript than Ruby. So my recommendation would be work on this, be able to do this comfortably. That would be my recommendation. Does anybody want to see how I would make a delete button? First, I'm going to reseed this database.
Yes. I would like to see that.
Okay, so first I'm going to reseed this database. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do Rails. Oh, wait. This. Oh, I could do Rails. DB.
You the replant?
Yeah. Cool. So I'm going to go quick because it's more of just to show you. It's not. I don't think it's something you're going to have to be able to do soon, but we could talk about it. So now I'm going to do Rails S. Okay, let's refresh this. Oh, thank God we got rid of all those hideous things. So first thing that we have to do is we have to create a delete button, right? So that's first. So let's do that. Whoops. We could go to our app.js. Where would it go? We can make a delete button here. Let's do my card, cartoon title, cartoon image. Let's do const delete button. Create element. And we are going to call it button. Then we're going to say delete button dot inner text is going to equal, what do you think it's going to say here? X. It's just going to be an X. Simple as that. Cool. Awesome. And let's do this. Let's say, let's just say, I don't know. Let's, just for the shits and giggles of it, we are going to say dot class list dot add, and we are going to add, we want probably red. Oh wait, I think you would do it like this. We want red background, white text. Background, and then maybe white text. So first, let's see if all that worked. I'm going to do save, refresh. It doesn't look like I have my buttons. Where are my buttons?
You need to append it.
You're right. That is exactly what it is. My card.append. Delete button. Bam. Cool. We can also just edit that in here. We can be like, what did I say? Red background. So I can go dot red background. Bam. And we're just going to say background color. It's going to be red. And then we're going to do white text. Bam. We're going to say color is white. Cool. See if that worked. Ah, we got it working. It's great. Oh, flip though. We need event listeners around here. This is we're gonna get further into this than I thought. What if I say for this whole buttons container you can click anywhere you want? We're gonna add a new event listener. in our JS. So we're going to do this. We're going to say buttons container. Whoops. I'm going to make a container, cartoons container. Oh, that already exists somewhere. Where does that go? Oh, I don't know. Anyways, I could just do a bigger one. It don't matter. More scoped outer one. So I can say, or better yet, we could do it the shorthand form where we don't actually have to specify anything. And then we're just going to add event listener to that, and we're going to add a click event listener. Then we can do a thing called handle click. Cool. So now we have one event listener that's doing this. And I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to say handle click. What gets passed into any callback on an event listener?
The event.
Yep. Cool. So that means that this could be a function of the event. So I could say event here. And let's just start by console.logging the. I'm actually, instead of just logging the event, I'm going to log event.target. That's what we're going to log. I want y'all to look at something here. That didn't work. Click, handle click. What did I mess up here? Click. Did I save this?
I think it's the form that needs to be clicked because you did create cartoon form data add event listener.
Yeah, this should be the container. That's exactly what it is. Yep, cartoons container is what this should be. Cartoons container. That's what we want it to be. Okay. See how I click anywhere here and it's showing me the element that I'm clicking on? Cool. I'm clicking a button that says X. Cool. So let's actually make this button more specific. So where I do the button thing, delete button, we're going to say delete button dot ID, or not ID, we're going to do dot, or actually we're just going to add another class to it. So we're going to say delete button. Cool. Awesome. So I can go here, delete button. Let's go ahead and now start working. So now that I have a delete button, I should be able to go in here and say, well, we know what our event target is, but what does it look like when we hit delete button? So we want to go to that class list, which is like an array of different classes, and we want to see if it includes delete button. So we're going to say if, I don't know, event dot target dot class list dot includes delete button. We're just going to say console.log deleting. Cool. Dot includes. Oh, can you not do dot includes on a class list?
Is it? Did the deleting? Does that need to be a string? Yeah.
Huh?
Well, includes only take regex, or can
No, you can definitely do a string there.
Does it need to be like dot delete button or hashtag delete button? I know because you're talking about class lists, so it shouldn't.
Let's do this. I'm just curious. I want to just do console. No, I'm sorry. We're just going to do document. I'm also winging this, just so you know. Document dot query selector. I don't want h1 dot query selector. And then we want to grab the first delete. Oh, I know what it is. I think it's just that. Wait, no, that's not it. Document, no, it wouldn't be that. If document class list that includes, let me see. Dot delete. I'm curious, but let's see. We want to set this equal to my button. Let button equal that. If I go button dot class list, I think I might have to convert that to an array. I don't know that I can do includes. Ah, so you can't do that on an array. Wonder if I could say, interesting.
You need to use dot match.
Contains, maybe? There it is. Contains. So, cool. So I do this, it doesn't contain it, it's not there, no problem. If I do red background, let's spell something, background. See how that is now coming out true? So it just needs to be dot contains instead of dot includes. I think that's because class list is not technically an array. It's a special type of array or something like that in JavaScript.
Did you have a variable in there called deleting somewhere?
But let's see this. Let's see. Deleting is not defined.
It needs to be a string.
Yeah. What did you say though? Someone asked if I had a. Oh, was
just
that
a-
what you were asking?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Deleting, not deleting. Deleting, deleting, deleting. So now we have our logic. What is the thing that we need to pull out though? We need to pull out the ID, right? So how can we do that? Well, fuck. I think what we got to do is we got to look up this object. So maybe let's actually just go ahead and we're going to find a delete button. So we're going to go back up to what we did before. There should be a way to grab the parent, right? Dot parent. There should be some parent element. Cool. So now I get that card, right? See that? And you see how I have the ID stored on the card? So now I should be able to say dot parent element dot ID, right? Now I have the ID. So I could say, if that, we could say, let ID equals, I don't know, what is it? Button dot parent element dot ID. So I'm going to do event dot target dot parent element dot ID. Cool. So now we have an ID, and then we can just make a new function for deleting from the back end. Well, or if you want to delete it from the front end, there's a few ways you could do that, but oh man, this is running up being more than I remembered. And I'm sure I'm getting sloppy with it. But let's console.log the ID, make sure that's working. Bam. Cool. So now I know that I'm deleting the right thing. Bam, that's 23, that's 21. So can anybody walk me through, like, we're probably not going to get that far at this, but can someone walk me through the process of how I would go about deleting these now?
Optimistically or?
Yeah, let's say I wanted to delete optimistically.
Oh, well, in that case, yeah, I have no idea.
Well, this is actually pretty simple. So let's just say first we're going to remove the card, right? So first we're going to say, I don't know, let's call it remove card optimistically. Well, we'll say remove from front. Remove card from front. Cool. And then we're going to pass in an ID. So let's make a function called remove card from front. Bam. Bam. And then we can go in here and we can just go ahead and say console.log removing, oh, whoops. Removing card, and then we'll say which card number. D, and we want to make sure we pass in the ID here. All right, so I can go here and I could say, whoop. Oh, okay, removing card 23. Great. So that means that we have the right idea. I think it's as simple as remove element from page. Yep. Dot remove. I think you could just remove it straight off the screen. Pretty sure I could just say dot remove. So I could just say document dot query selector, and here the ID is exactly what we want. So query selector, and then I'll do backticks, and we'll just do boom, and we're just going to say ID, right? Oh wait, this should actually be here actually. Bloopity bloop. And I think I could just type in dot remove, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's find out. Cool, let's see if it works. Boop. Oh. Not a valid selector. Now it's
Oh, you need the hashed, yeah.
Yeah. Failed to execute query selector on number 23. Did I save? I might have saved. Oh, oh. Wait a second. Is that not a valid selector? What?
So you're trying to remove the whole container, right?
No, we just want
Or
to
the whole, or the card container?
Yeah. Okay, so I don't understand. Might need me to do. By the way, this is probably why you really should do it like, instead of just doing an ID, where do we say ID equals cartoon ID? We should do something like this. Card. And then now let's just look at the IDs real quick. So if I'm here and I'm just like looking at this card ID, right? See how it now equals card 23 instead of just 23? So now what I could do is when I look for that card, where is it? We're going to get to the part where we are deleting stuff. So document.handle click, remove card with the ID, and then here we're doing document. We're going to say, I think it's going to be.
Well, if you put card in there, isn't the whole ID now card?
What it should be is this card and that. Let's see if that works now. Remove of null. Let's see if this works. Card 23. I think I must have made a mistake.
I think because you put card in with there, now it's saying card twice. I think you got to remove card from query selector now. So I think it's already saying card 23. Because down below, I think you added the word card into the every
exactly
ID.
Right. You're exactly right. That's exactly what it is. Oh, it worked. Did that persist? Did that do anything to the back end?
No.
No, but now I can definitely at least do this. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Oh no, I have no more cards anymore. Okay, but I got them all back. We're good. So what do you think I would do here to delete it from the back end?
Fetch, delete.
Yep. So I think it's as simple as, I don't know, let's not get too deep into that now. I think that y'all should focus, be able to do this, be able to get, not necessarily the delete. I'm not going to expect you to know the delete right now, But for now, be able to get these things on a page. See if like within a day or two, you can get to the point where you could comfortably get these things on a page, add a new one optimistically, and then eventually delete one optimistically as well.
If you wanted to, you could have done like added the button in. Well, you did add the button in when each card was created, but you could have attached the event listener onto each button, right? With like the interpolated ID.
It's bad practice, but you can do that. It's better to have less event listeners. And what we did here, right? We said, if this button is what we think it is, then go into this logic. It's better to do it this way because then you only have one event listener on the page. Let's say you're scrolling through Facebook posts. Imagine if each of those Facebook posts had like an event listener on every button that they had, right? That's a lot of event listeners on a Facebook page. Or what you can do is you can have one event listener and send it to different areas in the code depending on what you click. Does that make sense?
What would be the best way to like if you're doing it that way? What would be the best way to like name the IDs or classes so that you can work backwards up the parent tree to delete the card?
Yeah, so I think that a solid way of thinking about it is, first of all, getting your IDs right. Like, here's a really strong example of like, okay, here is my create cartoon form. Very specific what I want there. And now I know, like, if I wanted to get my form off the page or something like that, that's what I'm looking for. When I have my cartoons container, now I know exactly what I'm looking at. IDs are to describe things that are very specific. So there was probably only going to be one cartoons container on my page. There's only going to be one, this ID, this whole card has an ID because, well, sorry, this whole card has an ID because I need to know which card I'm going to delete later on. Like, oh, I got to delete Courage, the Cowardly Dog. So I better like find some algorithm to link Courage, the Cowardly Dog to what it is. And a lot of times it's better to go off something like ID than off of name. I could have done it off name too, like, oh, see if it's Courage, the Cowardly Dog. And then, but it's more straightforward to go off of ID, especially because what if I had like two shows with the same name or something like that? Like, that's not unheard of, right? Maybe someone typed in Dragon Ball Super wrong and just put it in as Dragon Ball Z, even though the pictures and information are different. So you generally want to be specific with that. That's what ID is kind of for, is to have like unique identifiers. Plus it would break your page. I don't know actually what would happen if you had two things with it. I know you're not allowed to have two elements with the same ID. Like I can't.
That's in your validations, right?
No, I don't, it's not your validations. I think it's just a browser thing. Like, okay, let's see, document. I guess I'm just curious what it would do. Let's try it. We're gonna have two create cartoon forms, and I think it's gonna run an error. But I don't think it'll like stop the website, but I think it will run an error. You see how it already has like linting there? Okay, so it didn't break anything, but it's definitely bad practice because both of these are the same ID. And I'm surprised that not some error didn't come up. Like, I'm curious what happens if I do document query selector and then create cartoon form.
You'd have to do like query selector all, wouldn't you, if there's more than one?
I don't even know if that works with ID.
Or it might just take the first one.
Oh no, it does work. I thought that you would actually run an error if you had two elements with the same ID. I'm actually surprised that it didn't. But in general, the concept is you're supposed to only have one ID per like that ID's name per page. So if I have like create cartoon form, there should only be one create cartoon form on my entire page. For the opposite, like if you want to have something that like, for example, all of these buttons are like red background, white text, that's when you use a class. You're using a class to describe something that like what type of thing is this? Oh, this thing is a card, right? That does not have to be very specific. In fact, it could be varying degrees of specific. Like maybe I have different types of cards, but like I want all of the cards to share some property. So maybe I have like cards that are, I have big cards and small cards, but cards are still arranged the same way. I can give it a class of card and a class of big card if it's a big card and a card. That's kind of like what's cool about classes, is that you can use them, you could put a bunch of them on an object. And that's like how you're supposed to do it semantically. Damn, I'm losing my voice. I've been talking too loud. Y'all need to tell me to shut up. All right.
John, can I see the JavaScript, the part where you, with the delete button where you add the classes on there?
Sure.
Like scroll, I think it's near the bottom. I messed something up on it.
What did you want to see?
On the JavaScript near the bottom. If you go to the JavaScript, just go towards the bottom. There. Just
I could definitely
line
clean up the order of stuff on here, but hopefully.
Let's see, delete button on line 70, class list, add red back. Yeah, see, because mine red background, white text, and delete button. That's what I have. So, okay, I don't know.
Do you have your on click for your delete button?
Where's that?
Do you want to pull up your screen?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. I gotta make it bigger because I haven't. Okay. So, like, I'm getting my, like when I go to delete, it's console logging delete, but it's just not getting rid of it. So I thought, since my delete button it's not showing the red in that, like yours, it wasn't.
Oh, so you're just
like that's why I wanted to see this line to see if that was the reason why. But I mean,
does your CSS have it accounted for?
Yeah.
Nope, you don't have anything.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, I must have erased it. Okay.
Yep, that's all. So you just need to find whatever class, if you want white text, then you're going to say dot white text, and you're going to change the color to white. If you're going to want, if you want to change the background to red, you're going to select via the class selector, which is a dot, and then you're going to change its background to red.
Okay.
Is your delete?
But is that why the delete button's not working?
No, that should have nothing to do with that. The delete button's not working, it looks like, for some other reason. Failed to execute.
It's not a valid selector.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that we had to go through and fix. So.
Oh, okay.
See if you could try to debug that on your own. I think that would be really good exercise.
Yeah, you're right. That would be good.
Yeah. That
any hints on what the fetch data would look like, or what the form data for the fetch would look like for the back end side of deleting one of those? I know it'd be like localhost 3000.
I don't actually know that the back end is equipped to work with delete. I gotta look into that real quick. Let's see. I'm gonna go to the back end. You guys can't see what I'm doing here. One second.
Well, if there's a destroy function, it should be able to, right?
Yeah, I just didn't even check if there was.
Oh, well, yeah, not in. Yeah, this one might not be. I think there's only like an index, right?
Almost. Let's see. Cartoons controller. Index, show, create, update, destroy. Yeah, we got destroy functions.
Oh yeah, it's there.
I think you might even literally be able to, what is it? Post. I don't know that you need a body in it, because I think you're doing it all with query params like that. So I think you might be able to just, I don't know. I'll let you try it. It shouldn't be much different doing a delete now than before. The only difference is, well, no, it is a little bit different because you have to make a post request, but give it a shot. And if you run into an error, we'll debug it together. Or
So you'd have to set the method to delete and then, right? Because just like with a post for creating, the method would be
set
delete.
the method to delete. I bet you can Google some stuff and get that working. Another thing you can also do is go into post, right? So you can pop open post.
Oh yeah.
This is a little bit of a hack here.
Because like would your headers be the same, and then for body it would just be like the user or like the instance itself, right?
Here's a little bit of a hack that you can do. You can go into Postman. Say I'm gonna, okay, let's do blah, 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 blah. I just need a new request. Cool. So I'm gonna do, what is it? Localhost. I don't see.
HTTP:/localhost 3000.
I'm always so bad at remembering that.
/cartoons.
HTTP
//localhost 3000.
Yo. Bam. Okay. /cartoon/1. What you can say is you're gonna go in, or let's do, what is it, 23 or something? You can go in here and you can go to well, let's copy that. And we're gonna do a delete. I could actually go in and look at the code and go to like fetch.
Oh, how did you get there?
Literally just right up here, the thing
Under the
called
save
code.
the code.
Oh shit.
And then you can tweak that if you want to. And here they just destruct, they didn't destructure, they just, this whole body they use as a variable. Your request options, they use as a variable. But the way that we did it, we just had headers already in here, and this has built-in error handling. So it's saying if something fucks up, do something. Say that there's an error. But now you can get all that from Postman.
That's what .catch is. Yeah.
Yeah, .catch is saying, okay, if something happens, then, you know, say error instead of the other thing. So, yeah. Y'all feeling good? Keep practicing it.
Yeah, that was good.
Don't let yourself feel like stagnant, like, oh, I can do this. I watched someone do it. Go do it. Go do it. Get it done. Do more build and burns. Let's get it. I'm going to stop the recording and give y'all crap telling y'all to keep doing build and burns.